Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 11th episode of the story, in which Naruto sets out to discover his true reason for being Hokage. Look out, Ninja World! A new Naruto Uzumaki has arrived. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Naruto roared in rage, a powerful shockwave rocking the area, kicking up clouds of sand and powerful winds. Red Death gripped her scythe tightly. The Jinchuriki was only using a portion of the Kyuubi, but it was still enough to leave a mark if she wasn't careful. Crimson eyes glared into hers, and time seemed to stop. Both Whirlpool survivors glared at each other before a chakra arm shot out of the Jinchuriki's stomach. Red Death cursed and swung her scythe, creating a powerful stream of fire. Naruto's eyes hardened as the chakra arm grew close to the attack. Adding more demonic chakra, the arm seemed to flare up and easily broke through the attack without losing momentum. The chakra arm punched at the enemy, but it was suddenly blocked by an invisible force around the enemy ninja. The Jinchuriki scowled and applied more force against the kind of barrier. The chakra arm flared up once more, pushing even harder against whatever was protecting Red Death. Cracks suddenly formed around the ninja before the arm finally broke through with the sound of breaking glass. Naruto smirked as the chakra arm wrapped around Red Death's body. "I finally got you," the Jinchuriki exclaimed as he raised the arm high before crashing it against the sand with a loud crash. The Chunin relaxed his stance before hearing a familiar poof coming from the area of impact. His eyes widened as he focused on where Red Death's body should be but found nothing but sand. Damn it. Naruto slipped into his taijutsu stance as his eyes scanned the area for any sort of movement. A gasp escaped his lips once he spotted a sign of movement to his right. In an instant he charged at the source with his eyes focusing on the figure ahead. Another chakra arm ripped out of the red cloak surrounding the blonde and headed straight for the enemy. Red Death raised her scythe, small sparks of lighting gathering around it before the blade turned a bright color blue. The Jinchuriki frowned and ran through hand signs, hoping to be fast enough. The enemy ninja swung the scythe against the incoming chakra arm, breaking through it with no trouble before charging at the Jinchuriki with her scythe raised above her head. "Wind style, air bullets!" Naruto exclaimed as powerful blasts of wind shot out of his mouth. Red Death's eyes widened as the attack made contact with her torso, followed by 3 more blasts of wind. The Jinchuriki growled when he saw that his attacks didn't even push the ninja back. His eyes narrowed in confusion as the ninja grew closer. Suddenly a blast of realization hit him just as a bright yellow light glowed around the scythe. "Shit!" Naruto cursed as 2 chakra arms shot out of his back and dug into the sand. Red Death stopped her run and pointed the scythe at the blonde. The weapon shook almost uncontrollably from the amount of chakra it had absorbed. The Whirlpool ninja's eyes glared into the blonde's as a yellow blast of chakra exploded out of her scythe. Just as the attack was about to hit, the Jinchuriki was suddenly thrown into the air by the 2 chakra arms from earlier. The Chunin watched as the yellow blast of chakra exploded against the sand, kicking up sand everywhere. He would have been dead if the attack hit, there was no doubt, and he knew for a fact that he had to find a way to deactivate the seals around Red Death's body. This was no easy feat though. In order to do this he would need time to think of his next move, which was hard to do with the amount of hate being poured into his system. His control over the bloodlust of the Kyuubi was fading, and he would soon be reduced to an almost mindless beast. With what little common sense he had, the Jinchuriki gathered that the best thing to do would be to break through the seal with pure power. Judging by how the scythe had been shaking, he knew that there was a limit to how much chakra it could take. It was logical, in his clouded state of mind, that if he were to use the fox's chakra against the seals, then they would break. Naruto's eyes hardened, his field of vision blocked by the amount of sand moving through the air. He caught view of a shadow and released more demonic chakra that pushed the sand away from the area to reveal Red Death standing before him with her scythe on hand. The Jinchuriki snarled as he got into an all-fours position, looking at Red Death like a predator would look at its prey. Red Death frowned and gathered chakra around her blade. This time a tint of blue gathered around the edges as she twirled it on her right hand. The blonde's eyes focused on the ninja before he charged at her on all fours. As the Jinchuriki ran, he produced another chakra arm that shot at the ninja just as she swung her scythe. A blast of water shot off the scythe just as the chakra hand took hold of Red Death, instantly clenching tightly around her body. She held back a groan of pain as her attack crashed against the Jinchuriki's face, throwing him back a couple of feet. The Jinchuriki fell hard on the sand but managed to keep his grip on Red Death. He growled as the chakra hand clenched tighter on the enemy. The Whirlpool Ninja grit her teeth in pain. The chakra arm not only squeezed her body painfully, but it also burned her skin. She held back a smirk when she caught sight of the growling blonde. It seemed he hadn't caught on to what she was about to do. The rational side of Naruto took note of something. Red Death wasn't struggling against his hold on her. If she wanted to break out of the hold, he knew for a fact that she would have done so already. Another wave of demonic chakra poured out of his body, immediately silencing the rational part of his brain and filling him with bloodlust. Who cared that she wasn't struggling? That only made it easier for him to kill her. "You're a fool," Red Death muttered with a smirk beneath her gas mask. The Jinchuriki's eyes hardened on his enemy as he clenched the chakra hand. Earning a short gasp from the Whirlpool Ninja. "This arm is made of chakra," she managed through gasps for air. Naruto's eyes widened when a blast of pure red chakra shot out of the arm, immediately releasing its hold on the ninja. The Jinchuriki quickly ran away from the area but wasn't fast enough. The blast of chakra impacted against his right arm before the blonde was hurled through air from the impact. Naruto heard a piercing scream, a sound filled with pain and agony. He suddenly found his eyelids heavy but tried to open them to find the source of the scream he had just heard. It wasn't until now that he felt a numbing pain shoot through his right arm. His eyes caught sight of a blurry figure right on top of him, but before he could ask himself what it was, he felt something hard impact against his stomach. The Jinchuriki's eyes widened as he crashed against the sand, Red Death landing a few feet behind him. Was it me? Was I the one that screamed like that? Naruto asked himself as he fought to stay conscious. The world around him was blurry and his body was numb, clearly from the beating it had received. How the hell did this happen? He tried to figure out just how Red Death had left him on this state so quickly. She hadn't been kidding when she said that she was holding back. His body began to shake uncontrollably. He found it harder to breathe and his consciousness was slipping. The sound of footsteps echoed on his head as he tried to keep it together. Red Death walked towards the fallen form of the blonde with a firm gaze. The Konoha Shinobi's arm was a complete mess. Pieces of skin had peeled out of his arm, revealing part of muscle tissue with the rest being blocked from view by the amount of blood running down his arm. There was also a little trail of blood coming out of his mouth, no doubt from the kick to the stomach he had received while sailing through the air. "Stop right there." Red Death's eyes widened at the roaring voice coming from behind her. She quickly turned around to come face to face with a man she had known most of her life. In front of her stood Ayumu, her old sensei, with a stern look on his face. "What do you want?" Red Death growled with a glare. "It's not like you to get out of your little village, sensei." Ayumu kept a stern gaze as he took a quick glance at the blonde. "I came here to correct something I can't overlook any longer," he stated. "I thought that meeting another Uzumaki would change your views, but I can see that you've sunken too low to be saved." Red Death pointed her scythe at her sensei. "What makes you think that you can even get near me?" she spat in anger. "You're nowhere near where you used to be. You're only an old ma." A shot of wind struck against Red Death's torso, pushing her back a few feet before absorbing the chakra through her seals. The Whirlpool Ninja charged at her teacher and swung her scythe, cutting through the man without much trouble before. He phased out of view. She quickly altered her chakra, but nothing happened. Much to her shock, she hadn't been in a genjutsu, but her sensei had just simply vanished out of view. For Kunai suddenly landed around the Whirlpool Ninja, her eyes widening in shock as chakra shot out of them and created a kind of barrier around her. Whirlpool sealing technique, the man began from his spot near the blonde. He quickly ran through hand seals and focused his chakra, explosive barrier. The kunai blew up simultaneously, encasing Red Death in a powerful explosion. Sand shot out in all different directions, creating powerful gusts of wind that spread throughout the desert. Ayumu panted slightly before turning to the blonde with a look of worry. He kneeled next to him and looked over his condition. From the looks of things, most of his arm had been burnt off and he had received multiple blows around his whole body. By the way his body had shook earlier, the blonde would probably die if left unattended. "Don't worry, young one, I'll get you patched up," he muttered as he reached into his coat and took out a couple of seals. The man unzipped the Chunin's vest before reaching for a kunai. He quickly ripped through the white shirt the blonde had bought only recently. If he was to help the Leaf Ninja, then he had to slap the seals into his chest and stomach in order for them to take effect on his whole body. Upon ripping the shirt, the man's eyes widened, seeing a complex seal on the ninja's stomach. A small amount of malevolent chakra came out of the seal constantly and spread around the wounds on his stomach. "A Jinchuriki," Ayumu muttered with a sad look on his face. He took a seal and slapped it on the blonde's chest. Green chakra immediately came out of it and spread around the Chunin's body. He took hold of his other seal and set it gently on Naruto's arm, earning a light groan from the blonde. Since there was a seal on the shinobi's stomach, then he couldn't disturb it with another. Once again, green chakra poured out of the seal and enveloped the blonde, this time focusing on his arm. Ayumu watched as the seals healed the blonde, blood stopped pouring out of the Jinchuriki's arm and his skin began to heal. It seems the demon inside of him is speeding the process exponentially. Ayumu watched as the skin on the shinobi's arm healed up and left it as if nothing happened. There's more than meets the eye. I'm sure his arm is not completely healed, but somehow the dangerous wounds were the first to close. How interesting. Whatever tailed beast the blonde had inside him was a powerful one. Naruto stirred before slowly opening his eyes, widening upon recognizing the man before him. "What are you doing here?" he asked in confusion as he tried to sit up, but was stopped by a stabbing pain shooting through his right arm. "Careful," the man instructed as he helped the blonde sit up. The Chunin watched the man with a look of confusion. "So, what are you doing here?" His eyes suddenly widened as he began to stand, shaking slightly as he did so. Ayumu stood up and lent a hand to the blonde, carefully putting him in a standing position. Naruto bit back a groan of pain as his eyes darted around the area. "Where's Red Death?" "I managed to catch her in one of my attacks," Ayumu responded as he looked at the cloud of sand not too far away. "It's not enough to stop her, but that's why I'm here." "You can't do this by yourself, kid. I'll be able to help you a bit." He smiled at the look of worry that washed over the Chunin's face. "Don't worry about me. Just because I'm old doesn't mean that I can't take care of myself." "What happened to me?" Naruto asked as he clutched the seal tag attached to his chest. He furrowed his brows when he saw another one attached to his right arm. "What do these things do anyway?" The man chuckled. "Those seals contain healing chakra, similar to that of Medic Ninja," he explained. "This seals speed up the healing process of the regular body. However, by the looks of things, your body heals faster than normal. That added to the thing locked inside of you made my seals work at exponential rates." Naruto nodded as his eyes narrowed on the cloud of sand. The fact that the man knew about the Kyuubi made him feel uneasy, but he didn't have time to linger on it, for now he had to go over what he could use against Red Death. He quickly went over his conditions, and knew he wouldn't last even a minute of fighting anyone, much less Red Death. His right arm was in a terrible amount of pain, as was his stomach. The endless amount of chakra reserves he had were considerably low. If he didn't think of anything, he would die in less than a second. He appreciated the man's help, but he knew that he wouldn't last long either. He was already panting slightly, and a bit of sweat trailed down his face. The cloud of sand finally cleared to reveal a furious Red Death glaring at her foes. The gas mask was now completely gone, as was her brown cloak. Her pants and shirt were burnt in different places. The many seals on her clothes were fully exposed. The only thing that remained intact was the scythe gripped tightly on her hands. "You will pay for this, old man," Mayu growled. Ayumu suddenly chuckled, taking the other two ninja by surprise. I'm sorry, I just find it a bit funny yet sad that the few last Uzumaki are prepared to kill each other. Mayu glared at the man while Naruto's eyes hardened on his enemy. The man cleared his throat before throwing a dismissive hand at the two before his eyes grew cold. Don't worry though, I know that words can't change what's about to happen. You have gone too far, Mayu, and it's my duty to take you down. Mayu glared at the two as sparks of electricity gathered around the blade of her scythe. You won't be able to kill me, Sensei, she began, you're way past your prime. By the looks of things you can barely stand right now. The man's eyes hardened on his student, she was too far away from his reach now. Young one, he muttered to the blonde with a solemn expression on his face. Naruto threw the man a curious glance as he reached into his cloak before pulling out a couple of seal tags and handing them to the young shinobi. I know you're not completely healed, but I need you to do something for me. What is it? Naruto asked as he eyed the tags before stuffing them into one of the pockets on his pants and focusing on Mayu. The man kept his gaze on their opponent, an almost look of sadness on his eyes. I'm going to use a special attack on her, he began. The seals I gave you will keep her and I from moving. When I give the signal, I want you to use them without hesitation. This will require chakra, so be careful not to waste any. Got it? Got it, Naruto replied with a look of sheer determination on his face. Then let's end this, Ayumu stated as he charged at Mayu. We're almost there, Shikamaru stated as he and Gaara ran to the battlefield. The Jinchuriki had arrived with a badly wounded Kankuro on his arms. He told them that Naruto was left fighting Red Death and that he would need immediate help. The lazy Chunin had told Temari to take Kankuro back to the village while he and Gaara tried to help Naruto out. Good, was Gaara's reply as he hurried his pace. There were no more traces of the demonic chakra that had run through his system only minutes ago. The Chunin looked at the large clouds of sand in the distance with a scowl on his face. Remember that we have some traps set up. We'll make use of them when we're close enough, he explained. When that time comes, I want you to keep going while I stay behind to make sure it all goes according to plan. The Jinchuriki nodded, keeping his view on the battle ahead. Shikamaru's eyes grew serious as he went over several plans on his head just in case their trap didn't work. With things going as they were, he was sure that they had a small chance of coming out on top. They didn't need to kill Red Death, only stall. Right before Temari left, he had instructed her to try to get a Jonin to help them get out of this alive. He knew for a fact that Red Death was way above Genin or Chunin level. For some reason she seemed to hold back in all of their encounters, something that didn't go unnoticed by his sharp eyes. If she were to get serious, then they were all in big trouble unless they received the backup that was needed. We're counting on you, Temari, he figured as he continued to run through the desert. A powerful set of lightning bolts shot through the air at an incredible speed. Naruto watched the incoming jutsu and quickly jumped away from the area, ignoring the shot of pain that went through his whole body. As he sailed through the air, he quickly ran through hand signs before letting out a cry of pain, his right arm aching horribly. Damn it, the Chunin growled as he landed on the sand. Before taking out a kunai, he quickly flung it at Mayu, inwardly smirking when she jumped away. The area behind her exploded, hurling her through the air. He quickly charged at the ninja as he took out another kunai. Stop, kid, Ayumu ordered as he ran after the blonde. Naruto stopped dead on his tracks upon hearing the command, eyes widening when he noticed the wind going through the scythe. Mayu swung her scythe, shooting a powerful gust of wind at him. Trying to ignore the pain, the Chunin quickly ran through hand signs before being pulled away from the area by a hand gripping his left arm. Don't charge at her, Ayumu scolded as he pulled the Chunin away from the area. He threw a quick glance at the gust of air crashing against the sand before stopping on his tracks, letting go off Naruto. She's not going to play around anymore. Stick to whatever long-distance attacks you have. If you get close, she'll kill you within a second. I can't use chakra, remember, Naruto argued with a frown. How am I supposed to fight? The man frowned, watching his old student charging at them with her scythe on hand. Don't worry about fighting. Just make sure to use the 2 seals I gave you when I give the signal, he explained. Pay close attention. Got it, Naruto nodded but suddenly froze when he realized something. If he was to use two seals at the same time, then he would need to attach them to two kunai and throw them at the same time, obviously. The problem with this was that he could only use one arm. Using the other to throw a kunai would only be dangerous and stupid. His eyes hardened when he realized a clear solution. All he needed to do was get two clones to use the seals, but to do this he could only use one hand, damn it. Ayumu charged at Mayu, reaching inside his robes before taking out a paper tag. The Whirlpool Kunoichi saw this and swung her scythe once more, this time creating a large fireball that shot at her sensei. The man watched the attack get closer and closer before he raised his right hand, holding the seal on his open palm. The seal shone brightly as the attack made contact with the man's hand, before it began to absorb the attack. What? Mayu growled as she gathered wind chakra on her scythe. Ayumu smirked as he pointed the tag at the kunoichi before it shone in a yellow light. Mayu's eyes widened as a blast of yellow chakra exploded out of the seal and shot at her. Knowing that she wouldn't be able to dodge the attack, she quickly swung her scythe, creating a blade of wind that headed straight for the blast of chakra. The two attacks met in a powerful collision, kicking up sand and wind alike. Naruto shielded his eyes from the sand. It was clear that Ayumu was a lot stronger than he let on. He took a glance at the old man and frowned. He looked really tired and his legs shook from time to time. It was obvious that he was struggling to stand. If he didn't give the signal, then he would need to enter the fight once more. Naruto! Ayumu exclaimed as he ran at Mayu once more. The man pulled his cloak open to reveal dozens of seals attached to it. Do it now! Naruto's eyes focused as he used a hand sign with his left hand, pouring all of his remaining chakra into it. Shadow Clone Jutsu, two clones appeared at his side, both with determined expressions on their face. The Chunin felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him, his chakra reserves close to non-existent. By the looks of things, using only one hand to cast jutsu took a large amount of chakra. Not wasting any time, the blonde quickly gave them each one of the seals he had been given. The clones quickly ran at the two ninja, both stopping on either side of them. Both clones poured all of their chakra into the seals, making them glow a bright blue, before they both dispelled. Chains erupted from the seals and wrapped tightly around both ninja, earning a surprised look from Mayu. What is this? Mayu exclaimed as she tried to break free but found that she couldn't move. Ayumu chuckled as he closed his eyes. I made these myself. He opened his eyes, showing a hint of sadness. These chains not only hold us in place, but they also absorb our chakra into the seal where they're coming from. The perfect way for me to use my special seals. Mayu's eyes glared into the man, a snarl escaping her lips. This won't be enough to kill me. She turned to face the blonde ninja. He was on his knees, panting heavily with sweat running down his face. I know why you helped him, but it won't make amends for what you did. For what you helped create. Killing yourself before she finds you won't change anything. Ayumu gritted his teeth, his eyes glaring into his once student. We all make mistakes, he stated with a defiant look on his face. I will atone for mine by stopping your mindless revenge. Now we both die. The seals around the man's seals shone brightly before they began to burn. Mayu's eyes widened as her sensei became enveloped in bright blue chakra. The man let out a scream of pain as the chakra flared violently around the two ninja, kicking up powerful blasts of wind and sand around the area. Naruto gritted his teeth as he struggled to stand in place before he felt a hand on his back. Gaara, his eyes widened in surprise, seeing the redhead look at the scene before them with a calm expression. How'd you get back so fast? That's not important, he stated as he pulled Naruto to his feet. The sand ninja quickly formed a sand barrier around Naruto and himself just as the Ayumu's attack let out a powerful explosion. Pieces of the sand barrier broke from the sheer force of the blast. Gaara frowned as he worked to reform the barrier around them, but found it hard to do so from the amount of force pushing against it. It won't be able to hold on, Gaara stated as the barrier weakened. Naruto nodded with a frown. The blonde Chunin watched as the barrier cracked under the strain before finally breaking into grains of sand. As soon as it broke, the two Jinchuriki were hurled in the air before landing on the sand in a painful thud. Damn it! Naruto cursed as he sat up, trying his best to ignore the pain on his arm. His eyes widened when he took note of the area around him. There was a large crater where Ayumu had been with no traces of anyone around. What happened? Gaara asked. The blonde turned to see the sand walking towards him with a few injuries on his body. The Chunin frowned and gazed at the area around him. An old man named Ayumu used an attack to take Red Death down, he scowled, looking at the aftermath of the attack. He sacrificed himself to take her down. Gaara crossed his arms with a monotone expression on his face. I see, he calmly responded, that was honorable of him. Naruto chuckled lightly as he got back to his feet. His legs shook lightly under the strain, his right arm hurt horribly and his stomach ached horribly, but other than that he was okay, not counting the chakra exhaustion he was experiencing. You look relieved, came a voice behind them. Naruto froze, recognizing the voice. The two Jinchuriki turned around to see Mayu standing before them with a look of fury on her face. Her shirt and pants were burnt in several areas, and she no longer held her scythe. You will pay for this, brat. Naruto gritted his teeth in frustration. How the hell did she survive that? He screamed on his head. Mayu seemed impossible to defeat, and he had run out of ideas. There was little he could do against her anymore. His chakra was next to none at the moment, and he knew for a fact that Gaara didn't have much left either. What's wrong? Can't believe I'm alive? Mayu mocked with a frown. She clenched her fists as she glared at the two shinobi. You seem to have forgotten that I have many seals around my body. I managed to absorb most of the chakra from the explosion and used it to create a barrier around myself. It seems that old fool died for nothing. Boom! The area around Mayu suddenly exploded before everyone's eyes. Gaara quickly took hold of Naruto's arm and pulled him away from the area before it also broke into several explosions. Large clouds of sand filled the area, blocking everything from view. What was that? Naruto asked in shock, his eyes darting around the area. Those were the explosives we set up, Gaara explained. Shikamaru stayed behind to detonate them. Naruto nodded as the cloud of sand cleared up to reveal a panting Mayu standing before them with a yellow barrier around her body. You brats, she exclaimed as she charged at the two ninja, fury written all over her face. Blade of wind. Mayu's eyes widened as the air around her suddenly shifted before slicing through her torso. Blood splattered out of her chest as her eyes darted around the area before landing on the culprit. A jonin with half of his face covered stood behind. The two Jinchuriki with his right hand extended. Baki, Gaara deadpanned with an almost relieved expression. Baki frowned as he looked over Mayu's condition. It seems you kids gave her a run for her money, he began as he nodded at the two. Good work. Mayu gritted her teeth. There was no way that she could take on a jonin at her current state. Large part of her chakra reserves were gone, she had a few wounds on her body, and she was clearly outnumbered. If she was to fight now, it would surely result in her death. Damn, she muttered as she put a hand on her left arm, pouring chakra into a seal. She turned to Naruto with a frown on her face. We will meet again, and when we do I'll make sure to kill you. I might have missed my chance since I didn't fight seriously, but there will be more. Unlike Ayumu, I won't care if she finds out I killed you. Before anyone could move, Mayu suddenly disappeared in a cloud of smoke, leaving no trail of her whereabouts. Get back to the village, your mission is over, Baki informed with a frown on his face. I'll go look for her. She couldn't have gone far. With that, the man ran away from the area. I guess we're done, Naruto declared with a sigh of relief. This mission had been way over their capabilities. It was lucky that they had survived. Let's get going. Gaara nodded as the two began to trek back to the sand village, with the blonde struggling to walk, wincing with each step he took. He suddenly felt an arm wrap around his ribs and the other taking hold of his left arm. You're too hurt to walk all the way back to the village, Gaara deadpanned as he helped the Chunin walk. Naruto chuckled as the two continued to walk. Thank you, he replied. As things were, he knew that the Sand Jinchuriki was serious about trying to change. He was glad that he was trying. He had no doubt that they would be great friends. The Chunin suddenly sighed out with a weary expression on his face. I could really go for some ramen right now. Ramen? Gaara muttered with a confused look on his face. The blonde gasped in shock. What he was hearing was clearly some kind of sick, depraved joke. You've never heard of ramen? Much to Naruto's shock, Gaara shook his head. That's going to change soon, he declared with a grin on his face. Next time you come to Konoha, I'll take you to Ichiraku's. I'll invite Ino too, it'll be great. You haven't met her, have you? I believe I haven't, the Sand Ninja responded with a thoughtful look on his face. Is she one of your precious people? Naruto smiled. Yeah, he admitted, she accepted me for who I am and what I hold inside. I'll always protect her no matter what. Gaara nodded before his eyes caught sight of someone walking towards them. He tensed for a moment before noticing that it was Shikamaru with his hands in his pockets. Before he could tell the blonde, he suddenly felt him go limp. The Sand Ninja quickly turned to the blonde to see that he had fallen asleep. Lucky guy, Shikamaru sighed as he approached the two. He moved next to the blonde and wrapped an arm around his left ribs, helping Gaara with the weight. We're going back to the village, right? Yes, the Jinchuriki responded with a nod. According to Baki, our mission is over now. Shikamaru nodded as the two conscious shinobi began to walk once more. Their mission was apparently over, and the lazy Chunin couldn't be happier. The mission had been a major pain in the ass. If it hadn't been for the Sand Jonin Temari had called, then they would surely be dead at the moment. He sighed. It was too troublesome to think of such things. If it hadn't happened then, he wouldn't linger on it. What was the point? For now, all he could do was think of getting back to the village. An almost wistful expression graced his face as he let out a yawn. It's finally over, he muttered with a frown. Naruto stirred from his sleep, opening his eyes slowly before letting out a yawn. He gazed around the room he was currently in with a small frown on his face. By the looks of things, he was in a hospital. The room was a standard hospital room, but with sandy brown walls. There was the usual window next to his bed, but this time it had a clear view of the vast desert. From what he could see, the sun was high in the sky, which meant that it was around noon. He took a look at his body and shook his head with a scowl. His right arm was heavily bandaged, as was his stomach. The blonde let out an irritated sigh before sitting up, gritting his teeth at the sore feeling on his ribs. A part of him had almost forgotten that he had probably broken some on his fight with Sasuke. He was probably right if the bandages around his stomach were any indication. "You're awake," came a feminine voice from the door. Naruto turned his head to see a nurse walk into the room with a clipboard on hand. Ninja really are tough. A normal person with your kind of injuries wouldn't be able to heal at the same time you did. Right. Naruto muttered a little awkwardly. The nurse nodded as she ran over things on her clipboard before setting it down with a smile on her face. Well, according to what we were told, you are well enough to return to your village, she began. The blonde instantly sighed in relief. It wasn't as if he hated the place, but he was already sweating due to the heat. Just try to take it easy on your way back. Some of your wounds were internal, and it is advised that you go check up at Konoha's hospital just in case some of the wounds open. Naruto nodded as he moved to the edge of the bed, letting his feet touch the floor. I got it, he assured as he stood up and motioned for the white robe he now wore. Where are my other clothes? They should be in the bathroom, the nurse said, pointing at a wooden door. Once you are ready, you have to go talk to the receptionist so that she can check you out. She nodded one more time before leaving the room. Naruto frowned as soon as the nurse left. When he had fainted on his way back to the village, he had gained the memories of the clones he had left with Sasuke. The clones had carried the Uchiha to the hospital. The staff saw his condition and instantly took him to the emergency room, and that was when they were dispelled. I better check on Sasuke as soon as I'm out of here, Naruto muttered as he entered the bathroom. It was a small room with the standard utilities and even a shower. He idly wondered if the hospital had been an inn before, but dismissed those thoughts and looked for his clothes. He found his clothes folded neatly on a small table and walked over to them. Taking them in hand, he prepared to put them on before he took note of the shirt. Damn, I forgot about it. The shirt was ripped cleanly in half with stains of blood on the right side, with the right sleeve completely burnt off. With a frown he took hold of his Chunin vest and reached into one of the pockets, taking out a scroll. "This will be a long day." Ino panted as she stood in front of Tsunade with a trail of sweat running down her face. It had been around 4 hours of non-stop physical training. The older kunoichi had stated that stamina was a determining factor when it came to being a shinobi and medic. If one didn't have enough reserves, then they were no good in the field. "Come at me again, Ino," Tsunade ordered with a smirk on her face. The genin nodded before rushing in. Since ninjutsu and weapons were restricted, she had to depend on her taijutsu alone. Once in range, Ino punched at Tsunade with her right fist. The medic easily parried the attack by knocking the arm away with a jab, leaving the younger kunoichi exposed. Without warning, the medic delivered a punch to the genin's stomach. Ino's eyes widened in pain before she clutched her stomach and doubled over in pain. "Don't lose sight of the enemy," Tsunade scolded. The kunoichi raised her head to see a closed fist in front of her face. "That will get you killed out there." With that, she flicked her index finger forward, making contact with her student's forehead. The genin was instantly thrown away by the force of the flick. She fell hard against the ground and let out a gasp of pain. Tsunade had been serious when she said that their training would be tough. A groan escaped Ino's lips as she tried to sit up, but stopped when seeing an extended hand. "That will be it for sparring today," Tsunade stated as she pulled Ino to her feet. She looked over her student's condition with her trained eyes and found not much wrong with her. "We will be starting a new exercise today." Ino raised a brow in interest. "What kind of exercise?" Her voice held a bit of fear, which didn't go unnoticed by her master, seeing as how she smirked. Tsunade took a scroll out of her pants pocket. "This will be your first practice on medical jutsu," she began as she set the scroll on the ground. The medic sat on the ground, motioning her apprentice to do the same. "I want you to focus your chakra like the book read. This exercise's only purpose is to give you a look into what you'll be doing as a medic. It won't be until a few days that you'll be able to complete it." Ino nodded with an exited smile. "I'm ready," she declared, watching the scroll intently. Her master nodded and opened the scroll, revealing a single seal before pouring chakra into it. With a small cloud of smoke, a dead fish appeared before both kunoichi. "What is this?" "This will be what you'll be doing," Tsunade informed with a firm nod. "The purpose of this exercise is to revive the fish, but today you'll only be getting a feel of what you'll be doing." "I'm supposed to touch that?" Ino shrieked in disgust, inching away from the dead fish. Tsunade's right eye twitched. "Of course you are," she replied. "A medic isn't supposed to be disgusted by patients." "This isn't a patient. It's a fish." "A dead stinky fish," the genin yelled back with a glare. "This is supposed to give you a grasp of what medical jutsu is, so heal the damned fish." Tsunade glared at her student with her teeth grit in anger. Ino muttered something under her breath before inching closer to the fish. "Fine," she set both hands over the fish and focused her chakra. A light green glow emitted from her hands and spread around the fish's body. Tsunade watched the chakra intently. It would waver and turn back to its regular blue color constantly, but it was expected. It had only been a day of training, so it was obvious that she wouldn't be able to heal the fish in the slightest. The sole purpose of this exercise was to see where her student stood when it came to chakra control, and she wasn't disappointed. She noticed the disgusted yet determined expression on her student's face. The medic couldn't help but laugh lightly at that. Her determination was pulling her through this. By the looks of things, her student still needed some time until she could start her medical training. As things stood, she could probably handle the training in a week, but there was no reason in rushing her training. She wasn't very busy in the hospital and had a lot of free time, which wouldn't be good news for her student. Naruto walked to the receptionist's desk with a scowl on his face. He had been forced to wear his regular long-sleeved black shirt and dark blue pants since his other clothes had been ruined. It had been quite a task since he only had use of one hand, but in the end he managed, though not in the best of moods. And to top it all off, the heat was killing him. The Chunin vest didn't make things any better when it came to cooling his body, which is why he decided to leave it open instead of zipped up. "Excuse me, but do you know where I can find Sasuke Uchiha?" he asked the receptionist. "It'll be just a moment," the receptionist answered as she looked through a piece of paper on her desk. She slid her index finger around the paper until finally stopping with a polite smile on her face. "The patient is on the hall to the right, on the third door to the right." "Thanks," Naruto muttered as he looked around the building. The room he was currently in had a large hallway opposite of the receptionist's desk and 2 halls on either side of the desk. There were a few seats here and there and a few tables around them. "Excuse me, sir," the receptionist called with a nervous smile on her face. Naruto raised a brow and turned to the lady behind the desk. "Could you get your other ninja friend? He's taking up a bed and we don't want to disturb him." The Chunin sighed. "Where is he?" The receptionist pointed at a door with a polite smile. He nodded and walked to the room with a small grin on his face. He had an idea of who it was. He entered the room and let out a chuckle. Shikamaru was sprawled over the hospital bed, snoring loudly with a bit of drool in the corner of his mouth. "Hey Shikamaru," Naruto called with a grin. The lazy Chunin grunted in response, stirring from his sleep. "You're taking up space here. They have other people that need the room. Get up already." Shikamaru sighed loudly before sitting up with a frown on his face. "Damn, why can't I just have a few hours of rest?" The Chunin got off the bed and let out a yawn. "Looks like you're all better." Naruto raised his right arm, showing the cast taking up most of his arm. The shadow user shrugged. "At least you're walking." The blonde sighed before running his left hand through his hair. "Anyway, I think we might be able to go back to Konoha today," he began with a thoughtful expression. "That Jonin went after Red Death and said that we were done. We have to report to the council, but even if they ask, we're not taking that mission again. She's too strong us. If we go, then we'll only add to the body count." Shikamaru shook his head with a grim look on his face. "I'm not sure meeting the council would be a good idea." He scratched his head and closed his eyes. "The reason why Temari and I couldn't join the fight was because the council hired a mercenary to kill us." He watched as Naruto's eyes widened before raising a hand to stop him from interrupting. "We killed him without much trouble. He didn't have any ninja training by the look of things, and it was easy to catch him in a genjutsu." "What do you think we should do?" the blonde asked with a frown. "Get out of here as soon as possible," Shikamaru responded. "Staying here will only make us sitting ducks for the council. Who knows? They might even use actual shinobi this time, and we aren't in a condition where we can fight." "Right," he agreed with a solemn look. The lazy Chunin scowled and put on a thoughtful expression. "Where's Sasuke anyway?" Naruto tensed under the question. "The last time I saw him he was with you, and if I remember correctly he wasn't with you and Gaara when you were coming back here." Naruto gritted his teeth. "He's here." Shikamaru raised a brow before the blonde continued. "He attacked me yesterday and I was forced to fight him. I managed to beat him but left him in a bad state." "The Hokage needs to hear this," the lazy Chunin deadpanned in an irritated tone. Seeing the blonde's shocked expression, he continued, "If we don't tell him, then they'll blame you for whatever injuries you gave him. Besides, if he attacked you, then who's to say he won't attack someone else? I know it's a pain in the ass, but we still have to tell the Hokage." Naruto looked unsure for a second before letting out a sigh. "You're right." Chiyo entered the council's meeting room. Upon entering, she took note of the odd looks she received from the members of the council. It was obvious that they had no idea as to why they had been called to a meeting at such short notice. "Why have you summoned us, Chiyo?" a councilman asked. He had a wrinkled face with a head full of short gray hair. Another member of the council, this time an old woman, rested her elbows on the table with a serious look on her wrinkled face. "I take it what you have to say is important," she began. She cast a look at the members of the council before settling her eyes back on Chiyo. "Is it about the team of Konoha shinobi?" Chiyo nodded with a frown on her face. "I was opposed to the idea in the first place. Having a mercenary kill the team would only anger Konoha," she argued. "We are in times of crisis, and a war is the last thing we need." If that's why you have come here, then you're just wasting your time, another councilman responded with venom in his voice. The mercenary has already been sent. That's where you're wrong, Chio informed with a smirk on her face. The Leaf Shinobi arrived at the village a few hours ago. All of them safe and sound. What? The councilwoman gasped. Chio shook her head while emitting a sigh. Did you really think that a mercenary could take on a ninja? That's preposterous. She reached into her robes and took out a single scroll. This just proves that a ninja village should not be run by civilians that have no idea how things really work. What are you saying? A councilman growled, clenching his fists in anger. Not what I'm saying. Chio began as she opened the scroll and placed it on the table, showing the contents to the council members. Inside of the scroll were dozens of signatures from the most powerful people in the village. It's what they're saying. This is mutiny, a councilman snapped, bolting from his seat. You have gone against the council. Chio frowned. I have the support of the village and the trust of our shinobi, she responded before turning her back on them and making her way to the door. Don't expect to remain as members of the council. I will replace you all with people who know how things work, she stated without turning around, and consider. Your plan to kill the Leaf Shinobi gone. I will not allow it. With that, Chio left the room, leaving a group of angry ex-council members behind. What did you do to him? Shikamaru sighed out. I had no choice, Naruto responded with hardened eyes. He put the entire mission in danger and he attacked me out of nowhere. Before I knew what happened, my blade was going through his eye. Shikamaru let out another sigh. In front of him lay Sasuke with many bandages around his right eye, or where it was supposed to be. According to what the nurse said, he had lost his right eye since it had been damaged beyond repair. The Uchiha hadn't woken up yet, but the lazy Chunin was sure that things would get bad when he did. This is bad, the shadow user concluded. When the Konoha Council caught wind of what happened to Sasuke's eye, they would flip. The council treasured the Sharingan, and finding out that they were -1 would bring nothing but trouble. He sighed once more before throwing Naruto a glance. We'll settle this later, he concluded, not feeling like going over such troublesome thoughts at the moment. For now we have to leave. Staying here is too dangerous. Right, Naruto nodded before setting his eyes on Sasuke's unconscious form. What are we going to do with him? When he finds out what happened, he'll go nuts. Shikamaru nodded in agreement. Their teammate would surely attack them as soon as he woke up with one less eye. Don't you have some kind of seal to help us? He asked in a hopeful tone. He really didn't want to put up with more trouble than what was needed. The blonde let out a sigh before shaking his head. I'm not that good with seals yet, he explained. If I really want to get something to keep him from moving or waking up, I'll need a few hours in the least. Damn it, the lazy Chunin cursed. His eyes rested on Sasuke as he tried to think of a plan. They could try Genjutsu, but neither he nor Naruto knew any. Another choice would be to use his shadow possession, but he wouldn't be able to keep it up for the whole trip back. This was way too much trouble for him. This might sound bad, Naruto suddenly muttered with a thoughtful look on his face. The lazy Chunin turned his attention to the blonde. But why don't we just tie him up and just carry him back to the village? Who knows? He might not even wake up until we get there. That would be too drastic. Shikamaru muttered before his eyes snapped open. I got it. Naruto cocked his head to the side in a show of confusion. Then what are we doing? He asked, 'cause I don't have any more ideas. Just leave it to me. Shikamaru smirked. Naruto, Shikamaru, and Sasuke walked through the sand village, making their way to the gate that would lead them out of there. The blonde Chunin walked in front of the group with a nervous smile. Behind him walked the lazy Chunin with a scowl on his face, and the Uchiha walked behind them with his left eye closed and his mouth opened slightly. This is stupid, the blonde thought as they neared the village's gate. Not only was their idea stupid, but it was just bad. He was sure that if Sakura found out what they were doing to Sasuke, she would punch him through a house. Shikamaru kept his eyes open for any sort of trouble. The streets were crowded and lively, merchants declaring what they sold in an attempt to sell their products, while people engaged in conversations. By some sort of miracle, nobody paid them much attention. However, their true test would come when they passed by the gate. If the ninja there found out what he was doing, then they would think that they were up to something. "What are you doing?" a monotone voice suddenly asked. The three-leaf shinobi stopped dead on their tracks with Sasuke letting out a snore. Behind them stood Gaara with his arms crossed and an almost curious expression on his face. "Are you leaving?" "Yeah," Naruto answered with a nervous grin. Gaara nodded before setting his eyes on Sasuke. "Why do you have him under a jutsu?" he asked, making the two ninja flinch slightly. "You have him under your shadow jutsu, correct?" Shikamaru looked down to the shadow connecting him and Sasuke before looking back at the sand ninja. "We have to leave now, but he hadn't woken up yet," he explained. "This is the only way to take him back to the leaf. The council apparently wants us dead, so we're keeping a low profile." "I understand," the sand Jinchuriki responded. "Allow me to help you." Naruto's eyes widened slightly. "You'll help us," he muttered in disbelief, earning a nod from Gaara. "Why would you do that?" "Why shouldn't I help you?" Gaara responded before walking towards the two. "You have done nothing wrong, and yet the council wants you dead. As of now, my alliance isn't with the sand, but with the people I consider friends. That's why I don't need a reason to help." "That isn't necessary," came another voice, this time a feminine one. The shinobi turned to see Chiyo walking towards them with a serious look on her face. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. "You were with the council during the mission briefing," he stated, moving a hand to his kunai pouch. "What are you doing here?" The old lady chuckled and raised a hand to ease the ninja. "Don't worry, I assure you that I'm not here to attack you." "Did you think an old lady like me could do that?" she responded in a light tone. "If you don't trust me, then that means that you encountered the mercenary they sent after you." "What if we did?" Naruto uttered with narrowed eyes. "Then that would mean that you know that the council planned to kill you." Chiyo kept her tone light, trying to ease the three ninja in front of her. "Don't worry about that anymore. I personally stopped any further plans they might have had." "Why did they even target us in the first place?" Shikamaru asked in an irritated tone. "They were the ones that sent." "For us." Chiyo nodded with a serious look on her face. The council was being run by civilians, which means that they knew little of how the shinobi world is. She let out a sigh before continuing. "Although they asked for you, they thought it'd be dangerous if you set foot in the village, which is why they planned to kill you. It wasn't until today that I gathered the necessary support to override their decision. Now we're in a process to take them out of the council for good." "I understand," Shikamaru nodded, "but that doesn't mean that we won't tell the Hokage." "We'll tell him that you're changing up the council very well," Chiyo said before leaving the group. She had served her purpose. After leaving the council, she went looking for the ninja and found them easily since blonde hair was easy to spot. Naruto ran a hand through his hair, finding the situation completely exhausting. "Let's get going, Shikamaru," he said as the two ninja prepared to leave. The blonde turned to Gaara and broke into a grin. "We'll see you later, Gaara. Drop by Konoha anytime so we can go to Ichiraku's." Gaara simply nodded as Shikamaru released his jutsu and set Sasuke on his back. The two-leaf ninja gave a small wave before walking to the gate. Ino gave out a loud sigh as she walked back to her home. The sun was setting and the level of people around the street was moderate, which was a good thing because she had no energy to dodge through the large crowds that would usually flood the streets. Her training had intensified as the day dragged on. What started as sparring and trying to heal a fish turned into dodging Tsunade's attacks and doing a number of chakra control exercises just in case her current control wasn't enough. Her body was sore and her legs felt numb. She knew that she would be feeling it in the morning. The only good thing about the day was that Tsunade had given her the next day off, meaning that she could rest and meet her team, which right now consisted only of Asuma and Choji until Shikamaru got back from his mission. It didn't hit her until now, but her team seemed too small without the shadow user and Naruto, who had become a constant visitor. Thinking about the blonde made her smile. She couldn't wait for him to get back and tell him all of the things that have been going on. From starting her training with Tsunade to Sakura learning of their relationship. Another thing she would need to tell him is that she had asked her parents to have dinner with him again, though her mom had been the only one to agree. A smile graced her face as she thought of Naruto's reaction to the dinner invitation. He was intimidated by her dad and tried to avoid doing anything stupid in front of him, which mostly consisted of him babbling like an idiot from time to time. She knew that he acted hesitant and a little afraid when it came to this invitations, but in reality he was happy to have dinner with a family. She could see it in his eyes. Come back soon, Naruto. Her cheeks reddened as she continued to walk. Stars filled the sky of the vast forest that lead to Konoha. Naruto, Shikamaru, and a Naruto clone carrying Sasuke walked through the dirt road that would lead them home. It had been hours since they had left the sand village and they were glad to make it to a cooler environment. They were close to the village, about half a day away if they didn't make any stops. Luckily Sasuke hadn't woken up yet, which relieved them of what would be a major problem. As soon as they had left the sand village, Shikamaru had tied Sasuke up with several pieces of wire. After that, Naruto had taken a few minutes to make a single clone. Not having the use of his right hand made the task very difficult. Once the clone carried the Uchiha, the two Chunin began their trek back to the Leaf Village. The trip had been a long one and it wasn't over yet. Since Naruto was still sore from the fight, the group had been forced to travel in a slow pace, which meant that they were the bait of several bandits that thankfully hadn't shown up. This didn't mean that they would let their guard down. They still kept a clear view of the area to ensure that nobody would suddenly jump out and attack them. Roads between villages were dangerous after all. Shikamaru gazed at the star-filled dark sky. The breeze was cool against his skin and he couldn't help but let out a yawn. We should set up camp and call it a night. Naruto turned to his teammate, a bit taken off by the sudden statement. Yeah, it's kind of late, he agreed as his eyes took in the area around him. They were in a small clearing with many tall trees and patches of dead grass. I guess we could camp here. The lazy Chunin nodded before looking at the clone carrying Sasuke on its back. Let's take turns keeping watch, he began. There's always the possibility of bandits popping out. We can't let them get the drop on us or we're as good as dead. Having to keep an eye out for Sasuke doesn't help much either. Naruto muttered with a frown on his face. The blonde took a scroll out of his vest. Who's taking the first watch? Shikamaru watched as Naruto poured chakra into the scroll before letting out a sigh. I'll keep the first watch since you're the one that needs the most rest, he decided as a small cloud of smoke covered the scroll on the blonde's left hand. The smoke cleared to reveal a dark orange sleeping bag, making the shadow user let out an annoyed groan. Why did you ask who was taking the first watch if you were already taking out your sleeping bag? The blonde in question simply broke into a grin before laying down on his sleeping bag. Troublesome blonde. You're starting to act like Ino, a thing that this world doesn't need. Naruto chuckled as he closed his eyes and tried to fall asleep. His mind wandered to the events that had taken place in the last few days. Kiba going into a coma, his fight with Sasuke, the death of Ayumu, Kankuro's injuries, and finally, the fight with Red Death. Things weren't looking good so far. The mission had been a failure and many people had gotten hurt. He couldn't help but place a bit of blame on his leading skills. Maybe if he had done some things differently nobody would be hurt. The Chunin felt himself losing consciousness as he went over his thoughts. It hadn't really been his fault, the mission had just been too dangerous for them. He remembered Kakashi's words, those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. Thinking about those words calmed him down. He hadn't abandoned his comrades. In fact, he made sure that they returned home alive. With that final thought, the blonde fell asleep, not blaming himself for how bad the mission went. That part of him was gone now. He wouldn't blame himself, he would just get stronger and make sure it doesn't happen again. The sun peaked in the horizon of the hidden leaf village. People walked through the streets to start their daily activities. Such was the case of Ino, who carried a few bags of seeds with a pout on her face. It had been her day off from Tsunade's training and she had planned to sleep in, but that had gone down the drain when her mom had barged into her room so that she could run an errand. Why wake me up early today? Ino's pout deepened as she made her way through the streets. Her body was sore from all the training and she had a light headache due to the short amount of sleep she had gotten. Ino, a familiar voice called out. The kunoichi turned around to see Sakura walking towards her. What's wrong, forehead? Ino cocked her head to the side with a confused look on her face. I just heard something, she stated, her expression turning to one of worry. The blonde kunoichi raised a brow at this. Is it true that Naruto and Sasuke went out on a mission together? Ino put on a thoughtful expression. She hadn't heard much about Naruto's mission since he had left on short notice without having a lot of time to say bye. He hadn't said anything about who he went with, but she guessed that going with Sasuke was possible since they were teammates. I knew that Naruto went on a mission, but I didn't hear with who, she informed with a light frown, not knowing why Sakura appeared to be worried. Why do you look so worried anyway? It's not like they're strangers that haven't worked together before. Sakura shook her head. It's not that. I just don't trust Naruto that much, she admitted before flinching under Ino's harsh glare. She gulped before continuing. I mean, he just became a Chunin, and I don't think that he should be leading a team. He's a good squad leader, Ino snapped, taking Sakura by surprise. The blonde kunoichi caught herself and took a breath to control herself. She hated it whenever someone talked bad about Naruto, as if he hadn't had enough when he was a kid. He was a leader on my last mission and everything came out okay. Besides, he's pretty serious when it comes to missions. Right. Sakura muttered, not completely convinced. It wasn't that she didn't trust Naruto's abilities, it was his lack of responsibility that got her worried. Her teammates were out on a mission with one of them, a fresh Chunin, being the squad leader. She didn't think that there was anything wrong with worrying over them. Ino scowled as she crossed her arms. Anything else you want? She asked in a harsher tone than intended. She caught herself and let out a sigh before smiling lightly. It's just that I have to take these home, she motioned at the bags on her hands. My mom wants to grow these in the garden. The pink-haired kunoichi smiled as an idea struck her. Do you mind if I help you with the bags? She offered. Ino hesitantly gave her one of the bags, looking at her oddly. Sakura caught the look and frowned. Hey, I just haven't seen your mom in a while and thought it would be polite to go and say hi. The Yamanaka smiled and led the way. It had been a while, years even, since she had spent time with Sakura. They had been good friends but allowed a childish crush to break them apart. But now all had changed. She was happy with Naruto and there was nothing to keep her friendship with Sakura from healing. Ino smiled as she kept on walking, now with Sakura trailing along. She was glad that the pink-haired kunoichi had been around. Her arms were really sore, and it was great to have someone to carry some of the bags for her, at least until Naruto got back. That job was his after all. Danzo was a calculating man. He always planned ahead of time and knew to be patient, which was why he still pursued the title of Hokage. That title would bring him more power to protect the village and mold it to his liking. As things stood, the village was too peaceful, something that made the ninja weak and unaccustomed to war. If things stayed like they were then, any other hidden village could easily destroy them. It was a good thing that he had his route to fight back since he couldn't rely on other ninja. The elder currently sat on the empty council room. It was a large room with few paintings on its wall and a large circular table where all the members sat. There was a larger chair facing the door, which was where the Hokage would sit during meetings. This is where he currently sat, his elbows resting on the table, going over the information he had received. Apparently, the Jinchuriki was in a relationship with the Yamanaka clan heir. He found this to be unacceptable but knew not to do anything against it. Unlike his informant on the matter, the Haruno council member, he wouldn't make his displeasure known, not yet anyway. By the looks of things, Inoichi approved, which meant that other clan heads wouldn't mind either, except for the Hyuga if he swayed them a little bit. Of course the Hokage would also approve of them. The man had a soft spot for the brat, which meant that trying to sway the council was out of the question. The Konoha elder narrowed his eyes as he thought of a way to make the situation favor him. In reality, he couldn't care less about the relationship of the two kids. In fact, he didn't care about them in general. What he cared about was the Jinchuriki, the same that had been out of his reach before. He remembered setting everything up so that he could make the brat into one of his root ninja, but it had failed after the third had refused the idea and ordered the council to do the same, not leaving room for any oppositions. He hadn't given up on controlling the Kyuubi, much like he hadn't given up on being Hokage. The Jinchuriki was still young and could be easily manipulated if he played his cards right. Things like relationships, responsibility, and pride were the best things to use if attempting to take control of someone. This wouldn't happen overnight, of course. He would need to make his move slowly. The elder rose from his chair, knowing what needed to be done. He would attempt to control the Kyuubi by using the relationship against him. To do this, he would need his root. Having someone find out would result in a bad outcome. He would try to get his ninja on missions with the brat. This way they could gain his trust and sway his mind towards what he wanted. The Kyuubi will be under my control, he thought as he made his way to the door. This time nobody would stop him. Once the brat was under his control, then he would bury his identity, probably fake his death if need be. Fake the Jinchuriki's death. Danzu mused, remembering the night of the Kyuubi attack. He smirked as he recalled a memory. He had bred a large amount of hate that day. Hate that he knew wouldn't disappear over the years, of this he was sure. He assumed that she would be back for revenge one day, but he wasn't too worried about it. When the time came, his root would take her down. To think that it all happened because of faking its death. An almost chuckle escaped his lips. It wouldn't be the first time I've faked the Kyuubi's death. With that, the elder left the council room, calculating his next move. Calm down already, a Naruto clone exclaimed at the trashing teen on his back. Sasuke struggled against the ninja wire that held him in place. Why are there bandages on my eye? What happened, Naruto? He roared in rage. He glared at the blonde walking ahead. For some reason he hadn't spoken to him yet and refused to answer any of his questions, the main one being why there were bandages all around his right eye. Answer me. Shikamaru sighed as he dug his hands into his pockets. Just take it easy already, he pleaded with an annoyed expression on his face. Sasuke had woken up only a few hours ago and he had yet to shut up. The lazy Chunin was thoroughly pissed by this and was starting to get a headache. He wondered how long it would be until they reached Konoha, since he hadn't been able to keep track of time. How much longer till we get there? Shikamaru asked the blonde walking ahead of them. He noticed that Sasuke stopped his struggling to pay attention to what the other Chunin had to say. The shadow user guessed that he wanted to get home as much as they did. We should be close now, Naruto began. He turned to his two teammates, his eyes lingering on the clone carrying Sasuke on its back before turning to his fellow Chunin. Do you mind carrying Sasuke for a while? He asked Shikamaru, who instantly scowled at the idea of work. It's just so the clone can run up ahead and tell us how much longer it will take to get home, he quickly added. Fine, Shikamaru sighed out. He really wanted to know how much closer they were to home after a whole day of traveling, anything to get Sasuke to stop yelling. They had gotten up early in the morning, so early in fact that it had been dark out. With the threat of bandits and missing ninja, they had decided on leaving only a few minutes after waking up. The lazy Chunin walked over to the clone, inwardly smirking when it simply dropped Sasuke off its back before leaping away from the area. Much to Sasuke's rage, Shikamaru hoisted him on his back before walking over to Naruto. He'd better get back quickly, the Nara muttered, sending a glare at the struggling Uchiha on his back. Naruto grinned weakly before turning back to the road ahead. The real reason why he had sent the clone to look ahead was because he hadn't been keeping track of time either. All he knew was that it was getting late, the sun was setting after all, and that they should be a lot closer to Konoha since they had been walking all day. The blonde glared at the cast wrapped around his right arm. If he hadn't been hurt, then they would be at the village already. Instead, they were stuck walking around the forest for 2 whole days. And the worst thing of all was that he had only eaten crappy food for the last few days since he hadn't had the time to look for any ramen at the sand village. All in all, he hated this mission with a passion. He was glad that they were done with it. The clone's memory suddenly hit Naruto, making him smile instantly. He turned to his teammates with the smile never leaving his face. We're not that far away, he declared with a laugh. It should only take us about an hour to get back home. Shikamaru let out a sigh of relief while Sasuke suppressed a grin. Let's get going already. Shikamaru's eyes widened as he watched Naruto walk ahead of them. Wait, who's going to carry Sasuke? Getting no response from the blonde, the lazy Chunin groaned. He was stuck with carrying Sasuke. What did he do to deserve this? The two Chunin currently staying on guard duty were struck by an unusual sight. Two Chunin walked to the village and, since it's the middle of the night, had an unearthly glow around them. If that wasn't odd enough, then the clone carrying another ninja certainly did it. One of the Chunin approached the team of ninja, carrying a look of confusion on his face. What's going on here? It wasn't until now that he took notice of the bad state the ninja were in. One of them had a cast around his right arm, another looked as if he hadn't had an ounce of sleep, and finally the last Uchiha, Sasuke, had bandages covering his right eye. This could not be good. The Chunin in current guard duty turned to his partner and gave him a nod, just as Shikamaru began to talk. We just got back from our mission in the Sand Village. The shadow user put a hand on the back of his neck before letting out a frustrated sigh. One of our ninja turned on us and we had to tie him up. Naruto watched the older Chunin nod. He looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. The man had black hair sticking out of the headband he wore as a bandana. The other man had spiky black hair and had a white piece of cloth covering part of his nose and cheeks. All right, the older Chunin answered before waving his hand in the air. In an instant, a group of ninja appeared around them. Take the ninja the blonde is carrying to the hospital. He looks pretty banged up. The ninja nodded and took the trashing Sasuke off the clone's shoulders before disappearing in clouds of smoke. You don't have to worry about him now. We'll report his actions to the Hokage and make sure he's punished for it. Thanks for your help. I'll go give the Hokage our mission report later, Shikamaru stated. The ninja wearing the bandana smiled. Don't worry about it, he waved off. I'm Izumo Kamizuki, he introduced before motioning to the other Chunin that was currently writing something into a piece of paper. That's Kotetsu again over there. It was nice to meet you guys. Nice to meet you too. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and that's Shikamaru. Naruto answered with a weary smile before turning to his remaining clone. Do you think you can keep going? The clone simply nodded. The blonde inwardly let out a sigh of relief. It was much easier when his clones kept quiet. Do you think you can get me some ramen? I am really hungry. The clone nodded before setting off without a word, his steps a little shaky. Shikamaru and the older Chunin watched the clone run into the village before suddenly bursting in a cloud of smoke. The two turned to see Naruto fall to his knees, panting heavily. You all right? Shikamaru asked, kneeling next to him and putting a hand on his shoulder. Naruto's vision grew blurry as he gave a nod. I just need some rest, he slurred, his head pounding and his stomach burning. He shut his eyes in an attempt to lessen his pain, but it only made it worse. His eyes opened to see a couple of blurs rushing at him before his whole world went blank. He found himself inside of his mind once again. The familiar sound of dripping water greeted his ears as his eyes darted around the dark sewer. That was his mind. With no idea of why exactly he was here, he decided on speaking with the Kyuubi. A conversation with the damned demon was never a good thing, but it probably knew why he was here at the moment. Naruto walked through the empty halls of his mind, the water splashing with each step. He heard a low rumbling echo throughout the area and knew that he was getting close. Turning one more corner of the sewers, he was greeted with the Kyuubi's giant smirking face, rage burning on his eyes as usual. Why am I here, Fox? The blonde spat in anger, much to the amusement of the demon. You have managed to put me in danger again. You damned brat, the Kyuubi growled. Naruto's eyes narrowed on the fox. What the hell are you talking about? I haven't done anything. The demon fox growled. You fool, it roared in rage, you got captured by the enemy. Because of that, there's something very wrong in your body. Something wrong? The blonde muttered with wide eyes. How could he have forgotten? He had been captured by Red Death, a sealing master. She could have put seals on his body or changed something on his seal without him knowing. Loosen up the seal, the Kyuubi suggested, his smirk widening. I will fix what you have caused in an instant. I'm the strongest being in the universe, it will be easy for me. Naruto's eyes narrowed on the fox. Do you think I'm that stupid? As soon as I loosen the seal you'll break out, He glared at the demon. I don't need your help. I'll find a way to fix this on my own. You will pay for having me here, brat, the fox spat in hatred. As soon as I have control of you, I'll hurt those closest to you. I'll bring them immeasurable pain before killing them with your own 2 hands. You won't be able to stop me. Naruto glared at the fox before turning his back on it and beginning to walk away before turning around and glaring at the fox one last time. You've probably heard this line before, but his blue eyes showed nothing for hatred for the beast locked within him. If you hurt anyone, I will find a way to kill you. With that, the blonde left, the world around him phasing from view. Tsunade watched over Naruto with a worried frown on her face. She had gone over the injuries over his body and found that his right arm was heavily damaged despite its normal appearance. It was as if he had been hit by something that only struck internally. Not to mention the injuries on his ribs and the case of chakra exhaustion he had suffered only hours ago. She had been at her office at the time when Jiraiya suddenly entered to tell her that Naruto had just gotten back to the village and fainted. He had said something about a seal, but she had left before he could finish. It wasn't as if he wouldn't talk to her later anyway. Whenever the pervert was around Konoha, he would stay for a few days, which gave them a lot of free time to talk. Tsunade gave a look of surprise when Naruto began to stir. Before his eyes opened. His eyes wandered around the room before they landed on the legendary medic, his face forming into a look of confusion. Where am I? He asked before letting out a yawn. The medic smiled and crossed her arms. You're in the hospital, she began. You suffered from a case of chakra exhaustion and fainted on the spot. I'm surprised you're awake so quickly. Naruto nodded with a grin on his face. I feel a lot better, he confessed. My head hurt a little, but it's not too bad. Let me be the judge of that, Tsunade scolded before looking over the blonde's body. His arm was a lot better thanks to her earlier work, as were his ribs. It looked as if someone tried to heal them, but they didn't do a very good job at it. She sensed the chakra in his body and found it to be increasing at a steady pace. How? She muttered in disbelief. He was a lot healthier than a few hours ago. It was as if he had been in the hospital for days. I told you already, didn't I? Came the voice of Jiraiya from the hospital room's door. Jiraiya-sensei, Naruto greeted with a smile. The toad sage chuckled and walked over to the blonde. It's been a while, kid. You haven't been doing too well, I see, he teased, receiving a frown from his student. Don't take it so seriously, kid. You're on your way. Do you know why he healed so quickly? Tsunade cut in with a serious expression. Jiraiya nodded with his mouth forming into a thin line. There was some kind of seal on his stomach, right on top of the cubies, he explained, his expression growing grim. Now, on its own it would have negated any influence the fox had on Naruto, but unlike Orochimaru's, it wouldn't have really messed with his chakra control. They tried to help him, the medic asked incredulously. She and Naruto giving Jiraiya their full attention. It looks like it, the toad sage admitted before crossing his arms, but something went wrong. It looks like something forced more of the fox's chakra than first intended. This made the new seal alter the original. The sage turned to Naruto with a frown on his face. Do you know what could have forced the chakra out of the suppression seal? Naruto narrowed his eyes in an attempt to focus. He couldn't really think of anything. The only people who might know what was going on would be Red Death or Ayumu. I remember, he exclaimed, his eyes widening at the revelation. This old man I met put some seals on me. The seals healed me pretty quickly, and after that I had to use the fox's chakra to fight. Jiraiya nodded, rubbing his chin. That must be what changed the seal. How did this change his seal? Tsunade asked with a frown. Is there any danger to Naruto? The toad sage shook his head. From what I've seen, it closed the gaps left by the original seal, he answered in a grim tone. Tsunade's eyes widened, already knowing what would happen. This means access to the Kyuubi's chakra will be close to none. His body adjusting to that change must have been what caused his chakra exhaustion, but now that it's over the shock, he's going back to normal. I'm actually surprised that he lasted as long as he did. The sage crossed his arms and looked at his student with a light grin. If you lasted as long as you did, then that means that there was a lot of the fox's chakra left in your system. Just how much of the fox's chakra did you use to have it last for 2 days? Naruto looked at Jiraiya with a serious expression on his face. I can't call on the Kyuubi's chakra anymore, he asked, ignoring his master's question. He received a nod from the Toad Sage. The blonde smirked, remembering his last conversation with the fox. That's fine with me. I don't want to use any of its chakra. You don't get it, do you? Jiraiya frowned. This is more serious than that. You need that power to help you against the Akatsuki. No, I don't, the blonde Chunin argued. I'll just train a lot harder so that I don't have to use its chakra again. Jiraiya looked at his student with a disapproving look on his face. Listen, kid, you nay dash enough. Tsunade broke in, tired of having the two argue. She pointed at the blonde and glared at Jiraiya. He's still healing. The last thing he needs is someone arguing with him. We can just talk about this later. Fine, Jiraiya agreed with a scowl. He turned to leave, but suddenly stopped on his tracks. Get healed soon, all right, he suddenly smirked, reverting back to his old self. I have a surprise for you when your arm is all better. With that, the sage left, leaving a very confused Naruto behind. The blonde turned to Tsunade. So I'm a lot better now, right? He asked with a tinge of hope on his voice. You are. Why do you ask? The medic looked at Naruto with a curious expression on her face, not knowing why he was asking. Then can I leave the hospital already? He pleaded with a hopeful look on his face. Tsunade sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Of course he would ask something like that. You could, but you're too dangerous to be left alone, she explained, receiving a frown from the blonde. Right now you need rest and people to look after you. Who's to say you won't collapse again? Knowing you, you'll end up doing just that. Naruto sighed in frustration. Come on, Granny? Can't you think of something? He whined with his arms crossed. I've been spending too much time in hospitals lately. I just don't want to stay here anymore. Tsunade thought it over before letting out a defeated sigh. Fine, there's something we can do, she gave in before suddenly perking up, realizing that it wasn't such a bad idea. This way he would have someone watching over him, whether it'd be her or Shizune. In fact, it's what we're going to do. Naruto suddenly thought that maybe he shouldn't have asked for anything. Shikamaru fidgeted under the Hokage's calculating gaze. The man could be really intimidating when he wanted to. It reminded him of being scolded by his dad from time to time, not that he was a kid that acted out. In fact, it was quite the opposite. He would get scolded for not doing anything, though it only happened because his mom pressured her father into doing it. The third took a drag out of his pipe, closing his eyes to calm himself. Sasuke Uchiha turned on you during the mission and fought Naruto, putting your whole team in danger, he stated with a tired look on his face. Sometimes he felt like he was too old for this. I can't punish him until I hear both of their stories. They both deserve to have the benefit of doubt for now. But don't worry, I'll see to it that he's punished. Is there anything else that happened in your mission? The lazy Chunin hated putting more weight on the tired man, but he had to give him the last ounce of information. No, sir, he replied before his expression grew into a serious one. The Sand Council tried to get us killed. What do you mean? The third asked with his eyes narrowing. They hired a mercenary to kill us during the mission, he informed, watching the Hokage's eyes shine in a silent fury. We managed to take him down, but he did prevent us from helping the others with Red Death. I see, he muttered, trying to keep a cool head. In reality he was furious with the Sand. They had betrayed them during the Chunin exams and had just done it again. They hadn't learned anything. He was opposed to war, but it seemed as the only way to get them to understand at the moment. We also met an old lady named Chiyo, Shikamaru continued, snapping the Hokage's attention back to the team. She said that the council that wanted us dead is now gone and that they would be forming a new one. I told her that I would tell you. The Hokage nodded with a light smile on his face. Very well. Congratulations on your mission. Even though it wasn't a success, you managed to come back alive. That is always good news, he nodded once more. You're free to leave. Right, Shikamaru said before leaving the office, hoping to catch up on sleep. The third sat behind his desk quietly, the hat on his head now a lot heavier. Decisions like this weighed heavily on a person. He wasn't sure if he could handle another war at his age. He didn't know how to go about the sand. They had gotten rid of the council, which would have been one of the demands he had made on them. But still the question stood, what would he do with them?
That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.